That's right. All right.
Started. All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started to respect your time. Since we're a little after 6, we wanted to let some latecomers come in and help yourself to some food. Back there, if you haven't done that, you can go grab some. So welcome to ACAP Cape Fear, which stands for Adult Children of Aging Parents. And the organization has been around for over 10 years. And the whole goal of ACAP is to educate and provide support and resources for people who are caring for their parents. And even though that's the focus of it, the information that we share is obviously helpful also for spouses and professionals and other people that are dealing with aging related issues. So tonight we're going to be presenting on living with a parent with Alzheimer's or other dementias. And we have Lisa Levine here from Dementia Alliance of North Carolina. And if you're not familiar with Dementia Alliance of North Carolina, they are very local in supporting people that are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, providing programs and support very much like what we do. So we're excited to have her here tonight. She's going to present and we will be done by 7:30. There will be some time for question and answer at the end, but as you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. If you're in our streaming audience, feel free to put your question in the chat so that we can answer those along the way as well. Because if you have that question, it's very likely somebody else does also. Our programs are all free to the public because of sponsors who generously support what we do. And so tonight we're going to hear from Jennifer Selden with Right at Home. They're a sponsor for this evening's program, but they're also a core sponsor. And that means that they provide ongoing sponsorship throughout the years so that we can have these programs. So I'm going to let her speak briefly and then I'll introduce Lisa after that. So join me in welcoming Jennifer.
I'm going to be super brief. My name is Jennifer Selden. I am with Right at Home. We provide in-home care for seniors and disabled adults. All of our services are geared toward improving the quality of life of those that we serve. And we do that by coming into the home, wherever you call home, and helping you do the things that you do to get through your day. All of us, whether that's help with getting up, bathing, dressing, moving safely around your home, eating healthy meals, remembering to take your medications. Right at Home caregivers are trained to provide that support for you or your loved one, again, wherever it is that you live. And we're all here tonight to talk about a really important topic that touches everybody in the community, whether you're involved in healthcare or senior care, or maybe you're not even taking care of someone yet who has a cognitive impairment. But all we have to do is go to the grocery store, and it's very likely that we're going to encounter somebody who's struggling. And so I'm really excited that all of you guys are here tonight so we can learn more about it. And the more education that we all get, we might be better able to, create a dementia-friendly community or just feel more comfortable helping that person that we see struggling. At Right at Home, we take dementia and cognitive support really seriously. All of our caregivers within their first 90 days of employment with us achieve a dementia care certification that is recognized by the Alzheimer's Association of America. Our director of operations is training and going to be certified under TIPA SNO's positive approach to care. And what that's going to do for us and anybody else who, receives care from us or who we encounter is it's going to better train our caregivers, prepare them to provide the care that we're giving to our clients, but also we can help people like you. Whether you're our clients or not, you can reach out to us if you have questions or if you need a little bit of help about how do I help my mom at mealtime, and we'll be able to help you out with that. Thank you for your time. I'm really excited you're here. I hope you get a lot out of this, and I hope this is the beginning of a very long conversation that everybody gets to have. You are up.
Well, I'll actually introduce Lisa. And also, before I do that, in case you're new to the facility, the restrooms are down this hall. You'll go past kind of the registration area, and they'll be on your right, the men's restroom first and then the ladies, just in case you need that. So I'm going to introduce Lisa. She's a Senior Director of Programs for Dementia Alliance of North Carolina. They provide support, services, and resource information to all North Carolinians with dementia, their families, and the community at large. And so part of her job is collaborating with government agencies, colleges, other nonprofits, faith-based and service-related organizations to implement that mission. And she's also responsible for their educational outreach through programs like this. And she also implements and evaluates their programs and services. So please join me in welcoming Lisa.
Thank you all so much for coming tonight. It's exciting to see so many faces out here. And I know that in one way or another, we've all been touched by Alzheimer's and dementia, whether it be my dad, who was diagnosed about 7 years ago, or our neighbor, or the person at the grocery store. I was in a support group earlier, and there was lots of talking about how a lot of the folks can't drive very far anymore, but they can drive within a 2-mile radius of home. So they all go to the grocery store and hang out during the day. And I never thought about that before. I'm going to go to the grocery store now and look for my people. So usually I can spot those situations, but I never thought about doing that in the grocery store before. So you never know who you're going to find who has this. So if you're comfortable, I would love to just sort of get a feel for who's in the room. So how many of you, and if you don't want to raise your hand, you can just look at me and nod a little bit, and that's okay. You don't have to, go, yes, it's me, but you can if you want. How many of you are caring for a loved one right now, whether it be directly or someone long distance? Okay, so most of us. And I'm guessing probably everybody else in the room has had at least one person in their family that's had Alzheimer's or dementia. So we're going to go through a couple of things today, and we do have the slides for you if you want those, so you can look at those later. Just a little bit about Dementia Alliance. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Sorry, there's just a little pop-up. That's okay. And so we are not government supported. We do this through private donations and grants, but we've been around for over 40 years now. I had to figure out the other day, 43 and a half years, which is just a crazy number to me, but well needed. And we do cover the state. We offer a lot of programs and services. We have information on our table about our music and memory program that we do in the area with Lower Cape Fear Life Care, and they are going crazy with that, gangbusters. We also provide dementia navigation. While you all have a lot of great resources here, if there's ever a time where you just want to talk to somebody, and maybe you need that to be somebody that's really outside of your circle, we have social workers that you can call and just talk to, and that's their job, just to listen to you and to share. And they've heard almost everything. I won't say everything, but they're there for you to talk to, get ideas, and bounce things off of. So tonight we're going to talk about not only our parents that have some form of dementia, and we'll explain a little bit more of what that means and what that looks like, but we're going to talk about the tone. So dementia is an umbrella, if you will. It's a group of symptoms. It's really all it is. It is brain change. It is cognitive impairment. We've heard all of these terms before. Used to be called senile dementia. Or it was just, that's just grandma. She's always been a little off, that's okay. But we do know that there are causes of dementia. Now, you may go to the doctor and you may get a diagnosis that's just dementia. And that's okay for a lot of people. But we do like to try and get a diagnosis that's a little more specific. And that might be Alzheimer's disease. That's the one we've heard of the most. It's the most common. There is a young onset Alzheimer's disease, which is typically before the age of 60 or 65, young onset. And then we have sort of regular onset, if you will, or adult onset, which is generally 60 or 65 and older. Depends on your doctor, who they are. The Alzheimer's dementia has sort of a typical progression. However, when you look, we're all different. We all look different. With what we typically think of as the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and then develop that rigidity, that shuffling gait, sometimes a lean, more instances of falls. There's a lot of other symptoms that go with that as well. We have another one called frontotemporal dementia. It is not as well known. It is about 5% of the cases of dementia. However, in people under the age of 60, about half of those people actually have frontotemporal dementia and not Alzheimer's disease. It does not look like Alzheimer's disease. It's very different. It doesn't start with memory problems. So someone may be very aware of what they're doing and may be able to recall things that a person with Alzheimer's wouldn't. But they may have behavioral issues or language issues that, again, get in the way of day-to-day functioning. And that's sort of that point of dementia is two or more things in our brain, two or more ways of thinking, speaking, that kind of thing are affected, and they get in the way of day-to-day life. When we talk about warning signs of dementia, I always call those red flags. Because if you have one, okay, maybe something's going on. But if you have 5 red flags, there's obviously a problem, and we need to go and see someone about it. And then finally, we have sort of everything else in here. And that might be people with late stage AIDS or syphilis often have dementia. Somebody might have a traumatic brain injury that could cause dementia. Someone might have, this sort of goes with Alzheimer's disease, but someone may have something like Down syndrome. If they were born with Down syndrome, they're at a higher risk of having dementia. And so that's a genetic thing, but it's also an Alzheimer's thing. So there are a lot of different types of dementia. And I do have some more information for you if you want to know a little bit more about them. But basically, it's brain failure. The person is doing the very best that they can with the capabilities that they still have. But for you as a caregiver, it can still be very challenging, especially if this is a parent or someone that raised you, someone that has been sort of in that parental position for you, and you've looked up to them and you've always taken their direction. Maybe you didn't always do what they told you to do, but they were the one to tell you to do things. And now those roles have reversed, and that can be really challenging. So tonight we're going to talk about a couple things: communication, engagement, safety, and sort of managing day in and day out kind of things. But I do encourage you to ask questions, because this is sort of an overview. You guys that talk about dementia a lot, we could talk about it all week and never really get into the deep details. But there are a couple things that I want you to keep in mind. So no matter what's going on with our person, and even if they don't actually have dementia, maybe they're just older and they've got vision changes, hearing changes, slowed thinking, all of those things, not able to multitask anymore. Those things happen as we age. There are things that we can do to help. So one of those is providing lots of visual cues. How many of you make lists? Anybody? Oh, we're a lot of list makers in here. Okay. How many of you use Post-it notes to remind yourself of things? Okay. And all of those are great, right? They help us a lot. And we should use our memory tools, and we can use those to help the folks we're caring for. I've been in kitchens where every single cabinet was labeled with what goes in it so that the person could find it. And that's helpful to a point. But when our loved one starts rearranging the Post-it notes or not able to read them anymore, they don't even notice they're there, and they're putting things, where they don't go, or they're opening every single cabinet to find the one thing, then we have to look at other things. But there are other visual cues. There are calendars that, especially early on, we can use those kinds of things. For my dad, on the calendar, we would write the top 3 things that were happening that day. And so instead of asking over and over and over again what was going on, he got into the habit where he would go look at the calendar. And he would go back and go back and go back, because it wasn't sticking, but at least he could be reassured there were things going on. We knew what was happening. Now, there's other things too, though, that we don't often think about that are visual cues. And really, really find a way around it. But we just do want to keep in mind facial expression is very important. Now, when we go to tone of voice or verbal cues, your tone of voice is very important as well. It doesn't matter if you say, we're going to go at 3 o'clock. That sounds nice and happy. But if you go, okay, we're going to go at 3 o'clock, that sounds a little bit different, right? Nobody wants to go anywhere with you if you talk to them like that. If I have dementia, I'm not remembering that I asked you any times before, because the area that took the information you said and I tried to store is blank. It can't hold on to any information anymore. I imagine it's like a filing cabinet, but there's no back on the filing cabinet. So I take the information and I put it in the file in the drawer and I close it and it falls out the back. And no matter how many times I put the information in the drawer and I close it, it keeps falling out the back. So I don't have it there. So I don't remember that I asked you. So when you are the caregiver, and it can be so difficult to do this, we have to keep in mind what our eyes are doing, what our face is doing, and what our voice is doing. Now, I know nobody in this room does this, but I have friends, and I'm sure you do too, that you can totally read what they're thinking by just looking at them. Any of you know somebody like that? You're like, oh, you can walk in and see the whole situation on their face. Well, the person with dementia is not necessarily understanding your words or retaining your words, but they are holding on to emotion. And so emotion is what they're remembering. Emotion is what they're holding on to, not facts, emotion. All right, and then tactile cues. So if someone is forgetting to do something, and this may be a little bit later in the disease, but for example, if I'm doing something and I'm talking to you, and I was going to take a drink, and I picked up the cup, and I kept talking, I may not remember that I was going to take a drink, because our minds are really created to do one thing at a time, even though society tells us to do 27 things at one time. But someone with dementia can really do one thing at a time. Talking and taking a drink are two things. We may not think it's very hard to do both, but it might be. So I might forget that I have this in my hand. So you can use a tactile cue and just touch me and go ahead and take a drink before we talk some more. And then you have to be quiet, and that's the hard part for people like me. I learned this because I worked with a woman who loved to chat, but she also loved to brush her teeth. And I was in charge of helping her with those kinds of daily things. And I learned should not try and fill up the quiet while she was brushing her teeth with just conversation. Because sometimes when you're uncomfortable, there's just that quiet, you feel like you have to talk. And I was rather young, and I learned very quickly, every time I would start to talk, she would stop brushing her teeth. And then she would start again, and then I would fill up the quiet, and then she would stop. And it took a few times for me to go, oh, Lisa, shut up. Be quiet and let her finish the task that she can do. But to get her started again, I would say, okay, I'm going to be quiet. You go ahead and brush your teeth. And all I would have to do is touch her hand, and she would see that it was there, and she could go ahead and brush her teeth again. So a lot of times a very simple tactile cue can help someone. So we don't actually have to do it for them. We just have to help remember, yes, do that. And sometimes just touching right there can tell our brain, oh, that's what I was doing. Have you ever had somebody do that to you? You forget what you're doing or something, and they just give you a little cue, whether that be a verbal cue, a reminder. Have you ever gotten one of these cues? Do you know what that means? Okay. All right. So talking about Teepa Snow and getting training, my friend Teepa came up many years ago with this thing called the positive physical approach. And this works for everyone, not just for people with dementia. I know that because I used to work in long-term care for many years, and I started doing this approach with everyone I talked to, whether they were living in my memory care or not. And sometimes some of my friends would call me on it and say, Lisa, I don't live in memory care. You don't have to do this with me every time. But it's just how I talk to people. So what we do is we come up to the front of the person so they know that we're talking to them. And then we get to the side because we want to be their helper, their partner, their support, not their boss. A boss stands in front of you, leans over you and tells you what to do. Your partner, your support stands next to you. So we get next to the person. Then we get on their level, because standing over someone, again, says in those unspoken kind of ways, I'm in charge of you. And that's not what we really want to do with anybody. We want to help them, right? We don't want to switch that position with our mom and we become the mom, though that might happen. And then what we do is we offer out our hand and we give that person a moment to process everything and to respond. And then when someone with dementia holds your hand, they actually can more easily connect with you this way. So just holding someone's hand can help them pay more attention to you, can help them follow your conversation better. And then if you need to do a task with them, it makes it much easier. Now, as far as communication goes, there's things we don't want to do and things we do. And I've got a thing on my table called the 10 absolutes of caregiving. And no matter who I talk to caregiver-wise, they go, well, I failed this one and I failed this one and I didn't do that one. And I say, congratulations, you're human. So the first one is we don't want to argue. But we very easily get into arguments because someone says no and we say yes, and there's your argument right there. No, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And we're just pushing back and forth. And so instead, what we want to do is stay calm, not argue, and find a workaround. So, and we don't want to ask questions you don't want answers to. So if any of you have been caregiving for a few minutes, trying to get somebody to take a shower, to get dressed, to get ready to go, whatever, anything that you suggest, they often say no. And so when I am going to help someone, for example, take a bath, I'm not going to say, do you want to take a bath? Because the answer is always no to that question. I'm not sure why, but it always is no. And so we need to not ask that question. Now we could say, it's time for your bath. And then we can ask other questions like, would you like to start the water or should I? Do you want to check the temperature or should I? Which towel would you like to use today? Now I'm going to do those one at a time and go at their pace. I don't want to overwhelm the person, but I'm not going to ask that one question that I already know the answer is no. So we don't want to do that. Another one is reality orientation. We were talking about this a little earlier. It's okay if someone doesn't know what the day of the week is. Generally, in the big scheme of life, it doesn't matter if it's Monday or Tuesday. Generally, it doesn't matter if they tell me the sky is green. It's still the sky. It doesn't really matter what color it is. So I don't need to correct them every time they're wrong. Okay. Also, they're doing the best they can with the information that they've got stored in their brain. They're doing what they can. Now, if I come up and it's Tuesday and I say, okay, I'm ready to go. And you say, well, we don't have anywhere to be. And I say, no, it's Sunday. It's time for church. I'm ready to go. And you're tempted very much to go, it's not Sunday. We don't have church. It's Tuesday. But if I'm very confused, you're just going to start an argument. by telling me I'm wrong. To me, it's Sunday. And so you need to find another way of addressing that. So it might be, well, before we go, let's do this. Or, you know what, on the way, I'd like to stop here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct our attention in another direction. I'm going to take your attention, and hopefully we're going to stop on the way and get a coffee. And then I'm going to say, we've got a little bit of time. Why don't we have a donut too? And then we'll talk about other things while we're having that coffee and the donut. And then hopefully we've worked away from going to church and we can go back home or go wherever we need to go. It's not that easy. It's a process. Depending on your person, some people are really easy to redirect. Other people, not so much. Another thing where we see reality orientation come into play is at some point, people with dementia forget who's alive and who's passed away. They go back in time. So their vivid memories are from young adulthood or childhood, when their parents are still living and when other people that they grew up with are still alive. And if they're looking for someone like my dad, I shared this with Marianne earlier. We got my dad a digital picture frame, and there was people in the picture. We knew who the main people were, but the people in the background we didn't know. And he said, "Oh, well, you should ask Mimi, who is his mother." And I said, "I should ask her. You're right." I didn't go, "I can ask her. She died 20 years ago." But I wanted to reassure him. And so I just said, "You're right. We should ask her. She would know exactly who that is." And that's true. So I wasn't lying. And then the other thing is pushing the issue. If someone is really resisting something, we need to back off. We need to just stop and rethink and try again with a different approach. A lot of times when we hear, so-and-so had a behavior, so-and-so was resistive, they were argumentative, they, were combative with me. Well, a lot of times that's actually what we're doing is causing that, because we're pushing and pushing and pushing. So if we can go, oh, they're really not going to take a bath, okay, no matter what I've said, then let me take a minute and regroup and think. One, is this something that we can deal with later? Does it have to happen now? And two, if I have gotten the person up here emotionally, they're worked up, they're upset, I need to deal with that emotion before I can do any task. So this is for anybody in any level of dementia. For example, someone that maybe has mild cognitive impairment or very early on, and they're just a little bit confused, but that confusion is very frustrating for them. And then we're giving them direction or help, as it were. We need to make sure that we are not pushing too hard. So we need to kind of back off, ease up a little bit, look at the feelings. When people have anger or sadness, a lot of times we just want that to go away. That's a hard feeling to deal with. So we say, it'll all be better here. Let's have a cup of coffee, because that makes everything better. But what we need to do is say, let's have a cup of coffee and let's talk about it. Talk about the emotions. For someone living with dementia, their emotions may not match the situation. They may be remembering something from a long time ago. They may think you did something that you didn't do, and you don't even know what they're talking about. But we need to address those emotions before we can move forward with anything else. And another thing that's really helpful is if you can get someone from just talking to actually moving. So if I'm upset and I'm in the bedroom, if you can find a way to get me to move from the bedroom into the kitchen, it might help me not only change what I'm talking about, but change my emotions and my feelings because something happened in this room that cued me to be mad at you, meaning you were trying to get me to take a bath and I didn't want to. But if you can get me in the kitchen, moving me, getting me to walk can actually help me let go of some of those emotions. Other strategies with communication, especially simplify. We talked about redirection and distraction. Now you'll hear a lot in dementia here about redirection and distraction. Distraction is kind of like, oh, I don't want you to have this, so look over there. You know? So the person with dementia is not stupid. They're confused. And so if they are more advanced in their dementia, it's easier to just simply distract someone, turn their attention immediately to something else. When they are earlier on in the whatever disease is causing their dementia, we usually have to work through the redirection process, which is addressing the emotions, being empathetic, and going there with them before we can sort of change the channel to something else. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about besides communication is engagement. And this can be really hard, especially for people living at home that can't work anymore. Their dementia has moved them past working. It can be a real challenge to get people involved when they can't do the things they used to do. But it's really important because we all need a purpose, right? We all need a reason to get out of bed. We all need to feel needed. And usually if somebody doesn't find, or you don't have a particular task, you'll find something to do, right? I don't have anything going on today. I'm gonna do whatever. I'm gonna clean the floor, whatever it is. If I have dementia and we don't have specific tasks, or I don't have a job for the day, I'm gonna find something myself to do. And it may or may not be helpful to you. And it may or may not be something you actually want me to do. So just keep in mind, a meaningful day. We all want a meaningful day. A meaningful day includes being physically active to whatever point that we can, being mentally active, and being socially active. Now, if you're the primary caregiver of a person living with dementia and you are always at home together, your person doesn't only want to just be around you. I hate to break it to you. But sometimes it's nice to be around other people other than our caregiver. So we have to find ways for a person to be socially active. And also, if it's important for that person to be spiritually active as well. Now, we want to make sure that we are helping our person have a sense of self-worth. If I can't work anymore and I'm not really successful at things, or I don't feel like I am, you have to find a way to help me sort of feel good about what I'm doing. That becomes a job for you as a caregiver. When we can successfully do all those things, it minimizes all this stuff. It keeps us out of trouble, if you will. It reduces anxiety. It reduces the feeling of, I'm not sure where I am because I'm confused right now, so I need to leave this place. And also, it can help me go along with whatever you need me to do better if I have meaning. So activities that work, what do we do? Activities provide a structure or framework for the day. Activities include every single thing we do all day long. Activities create a balance, and I'll show you what I mean next. What we want to do is we want to set up our person living with dementia for success. So we want to find things that we know they're going to be good at and help them do them. Or if there's more than one outcome, that no matter what the outcome is, it's a positive one. What do I mean by that? a lot of times, folks, we can adapt chores that somebody does anyway. And if we know someone can very successfully fold a fitted sheet, by all means, let them fold the fitted sheet. Probably nobody else in the house can do it anyway, so let's let them do that. But maybe they're the one that's always taking out the trash, and they can't do that the same way anymore. Maybe we can adapt that task so that they can do it. Maybe they're taking smaller bags of trash instead of a big bag of trash so they don't stumble. Now, another thing we need to make sure anything that we're asking our person with dementia to do is that it's age appropriate. A lot of times we tend to babyfy things or make them more childlike because our person is not functioning at the same level they used to, so they can't do as much. And so we bring it way down here. And instead, what we need to do is we need to make this as adult as possible. So I had a gentleman that I was working with, and I knew he liked fishing. And instead of just sitting and going through the items in the tackle box, which were selected, so there weren't hooks in there or anything, but we made sure that we came up with an idea that was very appropriate for him of why he would engage with this. So my story was, I have a new boyfriend and he likes fishing and I don't know anything about fishing. And I need you to teach me some things so I don't look like an idiot when I go fishing with him. And this worked for weeks and weeks and weeks. Same story every time, but he would go, oh, okay. And he would start telling me about all the fishing lures and the things. And we would, go through and I would, what in the world is this? Or, oh, am I going to have to touch worms? All of those kinds of things. And I used to go fishing with my grandfather. So I knew enough about fishing to just get into trouble and ask silly questions. And this gentleman would shake his head at me. And then he would tell me a little bit more about it. But it was something that we could do over and over again, that he felt like he had a purpose, because at the end of it, I would say, thank you so much. I feel a little bit better now. I feel more confident. And I couldn't have done that without you. And then he would do it again the next week, which was great. So there's different types of activities. And you don't have to remember all of this stuff, but you want to remember that we want to find a balance. So it's not all sitting and watching TV. And it's not all go, 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 go. And it's not all painting the house. I have another story about painting the house. But we find a mixture of those things, because that's what we do naturally anyway. But we have to help our person do those. So there's being productive or work, self-care, which I know we throw that term around a lot now. And I actually had a caregiver to me say, I don't have time for that. So we had to find ways of finding what she already does that are self-care and talking through. But self-care might be taking a few more minutes to get ready in the morning, pampering yourself an extra minute or two. Then we have leisure or fun, and we have rest and restorative. We all have different things that would fit into different categories for us. So some people, cooking is self-care. Some people, cooking is fun. Some people, cooking is work. And some people, cooking is recharging. And for some, it fits in different, maybe more than one of those categories. But we have to know our person to know what works for them. Does that make sense? So we have to help them find that balance, because they can't anymore. Now, another thing we want to think about when we're living at home, and this may be living together or when our person is living separate from us still, is safety. And I have some safety handouts on the back table, but there are a couple of things I want you guys to think about. So I talked a lot today with people about driving. When do we stop the driving? how do we stop the driving? But my main question for someone is, would you get in the car and ride around with them? Would you let the grandchildren get in the car and ride around with them? And if the answer is no to those things, then I say we need to talk about not driving anymore. If it's not safe, it's not safe for the other people as well as our person. So we need to think about those kinds of things. Another question that's really important is, yes, they can sometimes use the telephone, but in an emergency, could they call 911? Would they know how to do that? Would they be able to find the phone? Used to be a lot easier when we had a landline, not so much now, but can they call for help if they need it? Will they stay happy while you are gone? When you leave them at home alone, are they okay when you get back? Are they very antsy when you get back? If they're very antsy, then we're going to have a tendency to maybe wander and look for you. So these are some questions that lead to much bigger conversations, but they are safety issues to start with. Do they attempt a former hobby that is not safe for them to do anymore? Please take the power tools away. It's funny, but it's true. You know, the belt sander that's plugged in is not safe for most people to use anymore. That kind of thing. So the chainsaw is not safe to use anymore. Yeah. And then will they eat, go to the bathroom, that kind of thing, if someone's not with them. So those are safety issues. They tell us a lot more. They tell us, do we need to bring care into the house? Or do we need, to look at placement for someone? They tell us a lot of other things. What would they do during a fire? If you're not really sure how they would react during a fire, then we need to have a conversation about them being at home. Other safety questions to look at. This is environmental kind of stuff. Is there adequate lighting in every room? And is there adequate lighting in the evening and at night? That's when a lot of our falls happen, in the evening. Are there gasoline cans around? Some of this stuff I share with you from experience. So let's just say guns, weapons, again with the power tools. It's a real thing, people, I have to tell you. One thing that I didn't think about for a long time is you should put the address of the house somewhere near where the phone is, so that if your person ever has to call for help, they have the address in front of them so they can give the address to 911. Because even if they can call, they may not know where they are. And it's much easier just to be able to read that than to have 911 have to find us. It goes a lot faster that way. We need to keep in mind that dementia alters perception. So our peripheral vision is probably out here. If you put your hands out here, can you see your fingers wiggle a little bit? As we age, it moves in. That's why as we age, we have to crane our neck a little bit more when we're driving, because our peripheral vision is not as good. Dementia brings our peripheral vision in here very early on. And then as we progress, it's here. And so we have to keep in mind that dementia is changing the way the environment looks, because it's the way our person is processing things. So we need to walk around the house and look at things that are affected by depth perception. Do you have an area where the carpet meets the flooring? Is one darker and one lighter? So it might look like a step. Your person may not want to cross that threshold then, because it doesn't look safe. Is the floor shiny? Shiny floors are what we're all after, right? Shiny floors look wet. So I might slip if I go in there. So I don't want to go in the kitchen because you're not here, and I don't want to get a drink of water because I might slip in the puddle that's there. So we have to think about those things. We want to go outside and look at cracked pavement in the sidewalk. If I'm walking outside a lot, can I go on a clear path? Those kinds of things we don't often think about until there's a problem. But if you think now about it, you might think, oh yeah, I need to check that backlight and make sure that there's a motion detector on that so it comes on just in case you were to go outside at night, something like that. And again, things like sliding glass doors. They may not remember there's a sliding glass door there, and if they can't see it, they might walk into it. Are there grab bars where your person is going to grab? For example, are they going to lean on the toilet paper holder to try and stand up? Those are not sufficient to hold someone's weight if they're trying to use that to stand up. So we need to make sure we have things like grab bars. We may want to check the temperature of the water heater and make sure that it's not too hot so somebody doesn't burn themselves. And then as dementia progresses, we need to keep things in mind like cleaners, household cleaners can look like something I might need to drink. They come in pretty colors. Alcohol and tobacco can be really challenging if there's alcohol in the house and somebody doesn't remember, especially if they've had a problem in the past. They don't remember they had a drink, they have another drink, it can be a real problem. Small appliances can be difficult. I've always been able to work the toaster. Can I still, or am I gonna cause a fire? Stove and kitchen safety is a big problem. And even things like using lotion on our feet. We use lotion on our feet and then stand up and then we can fall. So all kinds of interesting things there to think about. Now this slide talks a little bit more about if you don't live with your person or see them every day and you're going to visit, there's things to look for. Like make an excuse to get something out of the refrigerator, to look around and see if there's a lot of expired things in there. Or are there medicine bottles that should be full that are empty, or should be empty that are full? That's another one. Are there stains that weren't there before? Pet stains or spills, that kind of thing. Are there new scratches and dents on the car? Maybe somebody hasn't told you that talked to somebody recently that said they found a couple of traffic tickets crumpled up under the front seat. Didn't know those were there. Hug your person tight. Have they gained or lost a lot of weight? Is there body odor where maybe there didn't used to be? Just those kinds of small little things can give us an indication that our loved one needs more help. Now we get to managing daily living. This is that list that I told you, if you go down and if you tell me that you've never done any of these, then I don't believe you. Never argue, never reason, never shame, never say, don't you remember? Have you ever done that and you just want to suck it back in after you've said it? The good thing is you get another chance. The good thing is you can say, I'm sorry, a lot. Never force. I've got to get them clean. I had a gentleman that called me once, and it sounds really funny now, but think about his position. He had been married to his wife for like 60 years or something, and she had dementia, and he called and he said, she won't sleep in the bed anymore. She wants to sleep in the recliner. I thought, okay. He said, but you're supposed to sleep in the bed. At night, you're supposed to go to bed and sleep in your bed. And we're married and we've been doing this a long time. And we both need to sleep in the bed together if we're both there. And we had to give him permission to let his wife sleep in the recliner as long as she was safe to do that, because she slept better there and she was more comfortable in the recliner. But he had to have somebody tell him, don't argue with her, don't force her, don't make her sleep in the bed if she doesn't want to. I will always remember him because it was like, this is just what you do. And now she won't do it. And we're like, it's okay. That's okay. So I've got some things in here that we'll go through really quickly. But for someone with very early loss, just remember that someone with dementia may or may not realize they have a problem. There's a switch in our brain that makes us self-aware. I understand what's going on with me, where I am, the issues that I'm having, and dementia turns that off. So it's not that I'm in denial necessarily about what's happening with me. I may not be able to comprehend that or understand that anymore. So you may need to really adapt some things so that I can still do them and be successful. But also, I don't want you to tell me what to do. And I need help, but I don't want you to help me. I can do it on my own. So a lot of times in this case, we're making small adjustments to help the person still be successful in what they do without taking over, without telling them what to do. And we still have to respect that they do want some independence. Often we're weighing independence and safety. And there's a lot of questions there. For the person, especially very early on, it works a lot to say, I'm sorry. Even if you didn't do whatever it is, just apologize. It helps them know you're on their side. Be friendly, not bossy. There's a fine line. You may think you sound friendly, but to them it may come off as bossy. And if you can, share responsibilities. Another personal story is one thing that we figured out with my father very early on was if you took anybody aside to say anything when he was in the room, he thought you were talking about him. And so we learned very quickly, you didn't do that, no matter what you were talking about. And it made everybody really be much more open in front of each other because you couldn't do any asides anymore. I have 3 sisters and we're always, we couldn't do that. We had to say whatever it was out loud or not say it at all. But that way Dad knew that we weren't talking about him because he felt like everybody was talking about him at one point. Another really good thing, as an example, if you're trying to get someone to come into the home to help a little bit, is to say, I need this. Do this for me. It will help me. Not they're here to help you, but put it on yourself. And people are much more willing to say, oh, well, if you need that, then it's okay. We can do that. Another thing is to say, let's just try it. That's not 100% commitment, and it's much easier to just try something than to say, we are doing this from now on. That really, really works well. And finally, you want to learn about so what behaviors. If it's not hurting someone, is it really a problem? Can't we let them do it? So for someone that's a little more confused, well, for anybody, we don't want to point out mistakes. We want to use simple language, clear direction, speak slowly, not move around too fast, and remember those cues, showing things. If I'm going to ask you if you want a drink, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Because if you don't understand what I'm saying, you're going to automatically say no, but you might be really thirsty. You're just not understanding the words that I'm using. Sometimes we have to remember that this person is doing the best that they can, but they miss some steps, or they do things out of order or not like they used to. And we need that to be okay, or we need to help find a way to fix whatever it is in a positive way. So laying out someone's clothes in the order that they should put them on, like underwear goes on the top of the pile because I put that on first and the shoes are on the bottom of the pile because those go on last. Because I've had a lot of people who ended up with the bra on the outside of the shirt because everything was just there. So I just put it all on. I can't get the sequencing anymore. And so very quickly we learned we have to do this in a very particular order. For a person that's in the middle stages, they're going to need a lot more help, but they're also not going to want a lot of help. So we need to physically limit the help to only what's needed. Only meet the person where they are. Don't take over for them. If they can still put their shoes on, but it takes twice as long, let's just make sure we have time for them to do that. Sharing tasks is great. A lot of times someone with dementia can mirror what you're doing. So if you ask someone to set the table and you start doing it with them, they can often do it by watching what you're doing. But two, if they do it wrong, that's okay. Because it's not about the table actually being set. It's about them having a purpose and helping to do it. I worked with a gentleman whose wife would wash the dishes after dinner. And she would then put them away. But she had dementia, and at some point she was not cleaning the dishes anymore. So she was putting away the dirty dishes in the cabinet. And instead of getting really upset, he figured out that he needed to get rid of most of the dishes and put them away. So there was 2 of everything. Or 4 if other people came over. But then instead of having to unload all of the dishes from the cabinet and put them in the dishwasher and wash everything every night because he wasn't sure what was dirty and what was clean, he only had to do 1 load because it was just 2 of everything that he was doing. So he learned to adjust so his wife could still do that task that she had always done. So how to help people? Is it worth a battle? You have to ask yourself that every day. Is it a safety issue? Is it a problem just for me? Or is it really a problem? And if the answer is just for me, then I need to make some adjustments. Use gestures, use objects. Remember, they will read your face and the way you say things more than what you say. And if you don't want someone to do something, we need to hide it away, put it away, and often out of sight, out of mind. Finally, you have to take care of yourself as a caregiver. And I know that's hard. But it is more than a 24-hour day job. It is very, very hard. No matter if your person can still do almost everything themselves or they need a lot of help, it's still mentally very taxing to not only take care of yourself and be a grown-up every day, but take care of another grown-up human as well, especially one that used to be in a role that took care of you. So take breaks, go to support group, come to meetings like this where you can learn new things, talk to healthcare professionals. If you are spiritual, use that. If you mess up on your 10 absolutes, give yourself a break. Remember, not only is your person doing the best that they can, but you're doing the best that you can as well. And finally, from my friend Melanie Bunn, she says, if you feel helpless in what you're doing, work on your skills, learn new skills. If you feel hopeless, get support. And if you feel overwhelmed, get resources. So that kind of helps narrow down a little bit more of what we're feeling. And this is the information about Dementia Alliance. All right. Does anybody have any questions? I always feel like I give you so much information and your brain is going woo, 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 woo. And it'll take the whole ride home to process it. And then you go, oh, I should have asked that. And the good thing is you've got so many resources and so many people in this room that you can't ask those questions of. So I really encourage you to reach out and ask those questions. But does anybody, yeah.
I have several questions. This was so informational, so practical. Thank you so very much. I gained a lot of understanding.
Good.
I am a former nurse, but I let my license go, but now my 5 kids are at the end of growing and flying the nest. I've gotten into doing some companion care work, and I really enjoy it. And I worked with a woman for 3 years, and she refused to wear hearing aids. And her daughter was very, very concerned about that. And I wanted to know from your training and understanding, if they have hearing impairment, doesn't that increase
It does.
the problems with dementia?
It really does.
Conversations,
Yes.
and we could not ever get her to wear those hearing aids, and I do think that her cognitive status plunged because of that.
And it's not only because I can't hear specifically what you're saying to me if someone's not wearing their hearing aids. It's also because when we're having a conversation, there's a lot happening in my brain. I'm having to take in your words, process what I'm going to say back to you, track the conversation, and all kinds of other things. So there's all kinds of processes that if I can't hear you, those aren't happening. So I can, and now we know that hearing loss is actually a risk factor for dementia. So when you all need your hearing aids, you need to get them and use them because it will help delay if we're going to get dementia. It really does make a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
She wouldn't
So,
wear them.
yeah. So, and you can't make someone as much as you would like to. Sometimes we can't. Yeah.
And then it seems like with these people that have the dementia, personal hygiene really goes down.
Yes.
They don't understand the importance of that.
Mhm.
So if you have someone that refuses a shower or to shampoo their hair, and I'm talking about 2 or 3 weeks.
We have to get creative. So personal hygiene often becomes an issue for people with dementia for a couple of reasons. One is if I'm not self-aware anymore, I don't know that I'm smelly or dirty or whatever it is. 2, I don't remember that I haven't done it, because if I asked any of you, did you take a shower 2 weeks ago today? You would probably tell me yes. And you would probably say, because I take one every day. Well, we all pretty much do that. And so the person with dementia has always taken one every day. So they still think they've taken one because they don't remember that they haven't. And that's their normal. So we don't remember, we don't know that there's an issue. So you have to get very creative as a caregiver to work around whatever particular hygiene issue there is. And I wish I could tell you there was one answer for all the things, but everybody's different. Everybody has different hygiene issues. There are some general things that we can share that can help someone, for example, getting a bath or brushing their teeth or whatever it is. But in general, we have to look at what's going on with your person. And a lot of that is routine, catching them before they get dressed in the morning or when they're getting undressed in the evening. What have they always done? Are we trying to ask them to do something differently now? Sometimes none of that matters, and it's just a real challenge too. Yeah. Did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
I
done.
was just going to
Sorry.
comment on the hearing. For those who have hearing loss, we get tired of asking people to repeat themselves. So we'll answer the question, whatever we think we heard. And wearing hearing aids it's uncomfortable after a while. So if they have problems listening to you, get in their face. They need to be face to face and get their attention. Otherwise, we don't pay attention because we get tired.
It can be really exhausting,
Yeah.
working extra hard just to follow a regular conversation. Yeah. Yes.
Does it do any good to tell them that they have dementia or Alzheimer's?
It depends. There's no easy answers with any of this. It depends on your person. It depends on where they are in this process and how aware they are. There are some people that are aware and that have conversations and discuss their dementia with their family. There are some people that think there is absolutely nothing wrong with them, even though they're very, very confused and need a lot of help. If your person is the latter and you're trying to get them to cooperate with you, that's not the way. You have dementia, you need help. That's not the way to get them to. But it really is a one-off situation. Now, a lot of times I've had people say, I want to have a conversation with someone. There's no diagnosis or anything yet, but I see them slipping. And I say, just ease into that. Ask them, I've heard you ask me the same question a couple of times. Do you think there's anything going on? Are you feeling like you're having memory problems? Sometimes that can open the door for them to say, oh, yes. And getting somebody to go to the doctor to get a diagnosis can be really, really hard.
We've already done that.
That's really hard. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Two questions. One, my oldest sister passed away 4 years ago, and so my mom sometimes, well, where's Carol? Is it best to, like, when we remind her, she doesn't thankfully go through the horror of just losing the child,
Mm-hmm.
but she gets like, oh my gosh, now really, now what happened? Is it better? A lot of times we just say, she's just out of town. Is that a better thing to do, or?
Probably from what the feedback she's giving you, is more like, oh, well, she's not here right now. Yeah, we wish she was here, but she's not here with us. So, and we just keep going. Yeah.
And this happened the last 2 years. We go on a family vacation once a week to the same beach. Unfortunately, we don't have the same cottage anymore that we went to for years, but she gets confused when we get there and she's like, I'm not staying here. And it takes at least half the trip before she's finally, we're like, Mom, here's your stuff. Here's this. We're all here. We do. Is there any tips on how to, I don't know, make her understand? Or is that just is what it is? Or
Putting things like, here's your stuff, but also putting things maybe in her room that she recognizes, that kind of thing can help some. I would say at some point it may come to where Mom's going to be more uncomfortable on that trip than not,
right.
just because I don't know where I am anymore. And if that continues to go in that direction, maybe you don't stay as long. Maybe you don't take her with everybody. Maybe it's a smaller group of people that she goes with. Sometimes for big family events and outings and even holidays, we have to start to narrow the scope of those things. And as difficult as it is for the rest of us, we have to only celebrate with immediate family instead of the extended family. And then extended family can come by one at a time and visit or something like that instead. So I would say make it look as much like she belongs there as possible. You could, I don't know if there's a brochure or a printout of the thing online that you could, give her even a couple days in advance, if that doesn't stress her out. Sometimes knowing we're going to go somewhere ahead of time can stress people out, so that she's got the idea coming a little bit in advance of that. And then just everybody being really, well, I'm so glad you're here. Just really extra welcoming and comforting. And yeah, trying to move her past that. Sorry. Yeah. Anybody else?
A question about the hygiene. So both of my parents have dementia, and the bathing is a big issue, but as creative as I've tried to be, they don't want help. They say, I already did it. And you can tell they did, because my dad doesn't have a lot of hair, and when his head starts getting really slick looking, you can see in the shower. They are calendar people. Is it offensive to write it on the calendar, today is shower day?
No, it's definitely worth a try.
When you said calendars, I was like, they are always looking at the calendar.
I think you should try all the things always.
Okay.
And if it doesn't work, you just apologize and move on to the next one. Now, with any of that, with someone with dementia, you can try and suddenly something works and you do it for a week, a month, whatever. At some point, it's not going to work anymore and you're going to have to change, but they're going to be in a different place by then, cognitively. But you really have to get creative, like you said, and be a detective. So absolutely try it, try sign on the bathroom door that says Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's shower day for everybody. Yay. That kind of something like that. Or now I'm going to take you out to lunch on Tuesday. So I really need you to make sure you get a shower beforehand. Well, of course I will. I always take a shower. Well, that's great. But this one is especially important. So I'm going to give you a call that morning and just make sure. And any of those kind of cues. It still doesn't mean it might happen. It might not happen, but yeah. And at some point you might need to go the route of so-and-so is coming over to help you get ready in the mornings, and I just need to do that because I'm worried about you. Or you're going to help them or whatever it is. It's weird because we have parents or whoever who have always taken care of us. We've never gone to doctor's appointments with them. We've never sat in the bathroom with them while they're doing all these private personal things. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, there's nothing wrong, but I'm going to go to the doctor appointment with you every time now. And I'm going to stand in there while you take a shower now. And if you look at it like that, of course it's weird. And they say, no, it doesn't make any sense. It's like a stranger walking up to you on the street and going, it's time to change your clothes. Yeah, I don't think so. Thank you very much. So we have to often come at it from whatever works in their mind. Yeah, I say go to a doctor's appointment with whoever you're going to end up caring for down the road every once in a while, just to break the ice now. I've gone with my mom a couple of times, just in case, because later on it's going to happen. So
my father would, if we said something to him like, well, Dr. So-and-so has advised that this is a great idea for you, and if he knew it was from the doctor,
yes,
then it was a lot easier than if it was from.
Yeah. Oftentimes, if we suggest it, our family member wants nothing to do with it. But if someone else of authority suggests it, often the doctor, but it could be whoever else they listen to. If you can just say that they said all the things, even sometimes if they didn't say those things, that's why we suggest a lot of times when it is time to stop driving, that comes from the doctor directly. And then you're also not the bad guy for that one. Hopefully. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are there any resources that you would recommend, books? I know there's so many books out there, but just a resource that you personally have benefited from to explain more about how dementia is diagnosed and, tips and just kind of some of the things you've shown.
I'm sure everybody in here has suggestions, so ask any of the folks, but the 36-hour day is recommended a lot. In our office, we say use that more as a reference book than a read. So use the index, look up whatever you're interested in, and then read that section. Don't just read it like a novel. It's very overwhelming, and most people can't get through it that way. Another one is called the Alzheimer's Action Plan. That's by Dr. Doraiswamy, who's at Duke. It's sort of along the same lines as the 36 hours day. There's a book called Creating Moments of Joy. It's little and sweet, and it's a great one. There's a book called Learning to Speak Alzheimer's that talks a lot about validation and going with the flow and how to respond to people when they say all these things to us. That's another good one. There are so many resources out there. So we have at Dementia Alliance, we have a YouTube channel that has a lot of videos about different things, but we also have suggestions for other people's sites on there as well. So you can go there to find other information too. It's hard because there's so many resources out there. It's hard to narrow them down. Ask everybody in the room what's helped them, and I would read that. Yeah. All right. I think we are at 7:30. I know we don't want to keep you, so you want to turn that off.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Your presentation was phenomenal and very easy to follow. Great tips and suggestions. Very well presented. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time this evening. And thank you to Right at Home for sponsoring this evening's event. Thank you for all the snacks and the goodies. And thank you so much for everybody that came in attendance. We're so glad you make these events. This is why we wanted to have a chapter here of ACAP, because we want to share resources, because there are many. We just need to know how to tap into them to help you, to support you in your journey in caring for someone in need. At each table, you will find a feedback form for tonight's presentation, if you will complete that for us. There's also a small card at each table. If you would like to be on our email list, it will send you can sign up online or fill out the piece of paper, whichever you prefer. There's also a presentation for next month's meeting, and I did not grab mine. Make sure I have the correct date. It is Tuesday, August the 8th at 6 o'clock here in the same room, and is the Juggling Act, Work, Home, and Caregiving. So I'm looking forward to that one too. This should be very good. And then you can go online to get our programs each month at acapcommunity.org/Cape Fear, and it will have each month what the presentations are, so you can plan ahead and months ahead of what's coming, because we have them planned out several months in advance. So if there's nothing else that anyone has questions for or you need information, thank you again for coming. Please help yourself to snacks, and information here at the front is yours for the taking. And thank you again for your supporting the organization. Thank you.
We can listen to advice.